Needless Things Podcast. Hey, Phantomaniacs! Welcome to the newest episode of the Needless Things Podcast, where we talk about toys, movies, music, and all manner of pop culture dorkery. I am your host, Dave, and we have got tons of stuff to talk about on this great episode, the feature portion of which is a conversation about now legendary toy company Super 7 with our good pal Kristian from Audible Interlude, a G.I. Joe podcast. But before we get to that, there's a ton of news. The 2021 New York International Toy Fair would have been this past weekend, and this week's episode would have been a Toy Fair recap, which is why I saved this special Super 7 episode for this week. But there was no Toy Fair because things are what they are, and very few toy companies put forth any kind of announcements or effort or anything like that, because I think they're at this point used to the model of just every month dropping some news. But Mezco, one of my personal favorite toy companies, decided that they were going to go ahead and have Mezco Toy Fair and revealed a ton of new products. But before I get to that, which is going to take up the bulk of this news break, I want to mention really quickly that Super 7's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Ultimates Wave 1 and 2 have gone into second production runs and are now available for pre-order from your favorite places like Big Bad Toy Store and Entertainment Earth. And Thundercats Wave 1 and 2, although I think maybe it's just Lion-O, Panthro, and Mumra, are going into second production runs and are currently available for pre-order from Big Bad and Entertainment Earth and probably other toy retailers. I would imagine Dorkside probably as well. But, you know, the Thundercats obviously are because of the announcement of the Thunder Tank. And then the TMNT, those are just, my gosh, it might be, I can't say it's my favorite toy line right now, but I love them. And every time I walk by the shelf, I have to stop and adore them for a minute before I move on with my business. So this is great. If you missed out on these figures the first time around, get them. Seriously, just get them. You will not be sorry. I love these Ultimates so much, and the Thundercats and the Ninja Turtles are both just so good. Some of the best figures I got last year and on into this year. So, having mentioned the Thundercats Ultimates, and having mentioned the Thunder Tank, which we will talk about in more detail later in this episode with Kristian, I do have to say that my plan panned out. I took a stack of some convention exclusives, some extra Menton box stuff that I had that I knew I would never open and will not regret not having, and a couple of Mezco 112 collective figures that were going for really high dollars that just didn't have the sentimental value to them to take up the shelf space that they were taking up, especially with more Mezco 112 figures coming in, including the Christopher Reeve Superman, which arrived yesterday, and I have not opened yet, and I have not decided if I'm going to do an unboxing yet or not. I would say let me know what you think, but by the time you hear this, I will probably already have opened it one way or the other. So I made way more than enough to pay for the Thunder Tank, and I officially purchased the Super 7 Ultimates Thundercats Thunder Tank this past Saturday because it just worked out really, really nicely. And then I saved the rest of the money. I put it in a savings account where it's going to generate interest in years. Of course I didn't. I bought other stuff. So anyway, that worked out really well. My Thunder Tank is secured and will be here. What is it? I think it's February of next year or something. I don't know. It's fine. I don't mind waiting. We'll discuss Super 7's business model when we get to the meat of the episode. So anyway, that's the smaller non-Mezco news. But here is the Mezco news. And ideally, we would have done a special episode with our head of research, Ryan, to talk about all of these reveals. But as I've been saying for the past several months now, I just don't have time in my schedule for anything more than what I'm doing right now. I think that will be alleviated, hopefully within the next couple of months. But for right now, 4 episodes a month, that's all I got. Well, 4 episodes a month here on the Needless Things podcast, where you can find, well, you've found it. You know where to get it. You know how podcasts work. And then 2 new toy reviews or YouTube featurettes, whatever, on the Needless Things YouTube channel every single week. So, and I'll be honest with you, the YouTube stuff has taken a little bit of that time that maybe before would have gone to our mini cast or bonus episodes or whatever the case may be. It's just a matter of prioritizing, and right now I'm really enjoying the YouTube, not just making the videos, but the engagement and trying to grow that channel. So please do like, subscribe, share the Needless Things YouTube channel. With new reviews up this week of new G.I. Joe classified figures. Next week remains to be seen, so stay tuned. Needless Things YouTube channel. All right, now we can move on. Now that I've explained why it's just me sitting here talking about these Mezco reveals, we'll move on. They showed 5 Points figures from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. They showed Bill and Ted and Rufus, and they look really cool. They're not my bag, not anything I need, but they look great. They showed a new Superman 112 collective figure that, in my eyes, is leaps and bounds ahead of the original comic book Superman they released, although a really good point was made, I think it was in the Toy Arc forums, that now that we know there is a more comics accurate Superman coming, that maybe this original one can stand on its own merits a little bit more. And I'm looking at it right now on the shelf, and I do see the appeal. I mean, I never disliked this Superman, but I do prefer one that's a little more traditional. I like the separate trunks. I like the materials better on the newer one. So in all likelihood, my original Superman is going to go to the same place that the other 2 112s that I just moved went. I just don't need 3 Superman 112s because I've got the Christopher Reeve, which honestly may be the only one I need. It remains to be seen, as the development of this new comic book version comes along. We'll see if it gets me or not. It probably will. But I just don't need this one between Christopher Reeve and the other one. But it looks great. They showed 2 different heads. One has sort of a smile, and I'd really like to see a genuine Superman smile. And then the other one has more of a serious face. But it looks really nice. I like it. I really like it. They also showed Michael Myers from Halloween 2. Okay, so this is going to sound weird, and you may have heard me say it before. You probably have heard me say it before. I don't buy the horror 112 figures, with the exception of the Ash figure, because I will buy almost any new format figure of Ash from Evil Dead. And that's it. I didn't buy the Frankenstein. I did buy the Nosferatu, but again, that's more of a special thing. And you can actually see the review of that Nosferatu on the Needless Things YouTube channel, because there's a sentimental attachment there to the old Silent Screamers Mezco toy line. So, with exceptions, I don't buy the horror figures. I've got lots of Michael Myers figures. I've got NECA's retro clothed one. I've got a Sideshow 12-inch one. I've got all the Michael Myers I need at this point in my life. I don't need to spend $80 or however much this ends up being for a 112 one. I just don't. But I do need in my life and on my shelf a 112 collective figure of Brandon Lee as the Crow. Big surprise figure. Looks incredible even at this early stage, because if you think back to all the 112 reveals, the final product tends to be much more refined and impressive than the first pictures that we see. And additionally, once you get the figures in hand, they are even more impressive than the final shots that you see for like the pre-orders and everything like that. I have yet to be disappointed by a 112 figure. Almost every single one of them, in fact, has exceeded my expectations. So this Crow figure must have. Will pre-order the second it goes up to be available. All right, more Rumble Society stuff, and as much as I hate to gloss over that, because I love that Mezco is doing these original characters in this format with all of these licensed characters, I love it. I think it's great. I love seeing original figures out there. However, at this point in my life, the nostalgic, sentimental value of a character plays a role in my enjoyment of and desire to have action figures, especially higher priced action figures. And the 112 figures that I mentioned earlier that I sold were the Agent Gomez and Baron Benz and the Aquaticons, which you can see a review of that on the Needless Things YouTube channel as well. They're both fantastic figures. I just don't have room for them in my heart or on my shelves, and I'm sorry. So I'm just going to say more Rumble Society stuff was shown. They showed a picture of Fantastic Four 112 figures that looked great. They were classic designs. Human Torch. My guess is that he comes with a regular Johnny head, a Human Torch flame-on head, and that the flames probably have magnets in them that will attach to the figure. That's my guess, judging from the way that Mezco has handled other pieces. Not that they've ever put anything out with flames like that, but that's just my guess, is that is how that's going to work. And don't worry about it, because if you look at the magnets on, for example, the Judge Dredd figure, those armor pieces do not come off until you pull them off. Now, as far as posability, I don't know how they're going to work around that. Maybe the flames will be a very, very soft plastic that will actually bend with the figure. I don't know. I'm very interested to see this. Thing looks incredible. Reed looks like he has stretchy parts. I'm sure they'll be interchangeable in some way. Sue looked really cool. I don't know how they'll handle her invisibility, or if they will, but it looked like an awesome set. Probably not one I'm going to get. I do like the Fantastic Four quite a bit, but I don't need a box set of them the way I did the Ghostbusters. And with the Marvel Legends retro-carded Fantastic Four on the way, I imagine we're going to see very similar looks in a much more affordable format. So, awesome that Mezco is doing these, but not really in my lane. Speaking of not in my lane, but definitely in Mrs. Troublemakers, they showed a new Living Dead doll, and one of the nurses from Silent Hill 2 looked absolutely grotesque and horrifying. I sent her a picture of it as soon as I saw it, and she said, "I want that. That's great." So that will be also pre-ordered. An interesting one. So we already know, oh gosh, is it Dr. Zaius or Cornelia? It's Dr. Zaius, right? I believe there's a 112 of Dr. Zaius that they've already... I don't think it's out yet, but it's soon. Well, they showed this past weekend from Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, Caesar and some possibly Troop Builder, possibly... I don't know if this might be a 4-pack, because it was 3 apes in the jumpsuits from Conquest. More details on that to come. I love the Planet of the Apes movies. I have never felt a particular urge to keep Planet of the Apes merchandise. I had all of the NECA figures at one point, and for some reason they looked incredible. They looked just like the movie. For some reason they didn't really do it for me. I almost feel like I'd be more interested in the Mego figures that were revealed. And Mego, they pretty much are always revealing stuff, but they showed some new Planet of the Apes figures. I believe it was over the weekend as well. And I gotta say, I think it's the fact that was a thing, the Mego Planet of the Apes figures, way back when the Apes movies were still coming out. And this is the original Apes movies. Those got me a little itchy, I'm not going to lie. All right, moving on. We have another redo. Following up the Superman, there is a new blue and yellow Wolverine coming out. If you remember, the first blue and yellow Wolverine was I want to say it was a New York Comic-Con exclusive. I'm not positive about that. So the pre-order was open for a very limited amount of time and sold out almost immediately. I am still actually on the wait list for it somehow, but I ended up with the brown and yellow Wolverine, which again was so much better in hand than it looked in pictures. But this blue and yellow Wolverine is because the brown Wolverine's my guy. That's the costume I would want him in. That's my favorite. I prefer that Wolverine because when I found the Uncanny X-Men comics, that's what he was wearing. But this blue and yellow 112 looks fantastic. I will absolutely get it. It's got the larger ears, I guess, whatever the black things are that go over his eyes and off his head. The much larger look really good. Shoulder pads are cool. Everything about this one looks good. I will get it because I'm a big Wolverine fan. And while I was very happy with the brown and yellow one, this one is more definitive to me in a weird way. All right, moving on to another thing that I will not buy, but I was very impressed with. They showed us, from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, a Green Ranger 112 collective figure that looked absolutely phenomenal. I am not a Power Rangers guy, but this might have actually been the best looking 112 figure they showed, because there's something about seeing that actual spandex suit, that signature Power Rangers spandex. Something about seeing it on that figure just looked so great. And this was not, because you see Wolverine and Cyclops and all these other characters in spandex, but those are all Mezco's interpretations. This was straight up just Green Ranger, almost looking like a picture from the set of Power Rangers. Looked incredible. Like, this is, I'm not buying any Power Rangers stuff, but looking at this is the closest I've ever come to wanting a Power Rangers figure. We do not yet know if it's going to come with an unmasked head or not. I would hope so, but I don't know what the price difference might be in the licensing there. So there's no telling. And in looking at, again, I think this was on Toy Arc, they mentioned that there are two different helmets with the figure, and it looks like one of the helmets might be the Japanese version, and one of them might be the American version or something, or one of them might be like a costume helmet, and one of them might be an action helmet. I don't know enough about Power Rangers to tell you, but Mezco are all about these little details like this. So I would believe that they might have one that's like the on-set helmet and one that's the stunt helmet. I don't know, whatever. Another one that was great, the Living Dead dolls, Fester and Cousin It from the Addams Family. Absolutely adorable, possibly the cutest Living Dead dolls they've ever done. And I like that they're showing a willingness to get away from the traditional Living Dead dolls design a little bit, because Fester looks very unique. Obviously, Cousin It looks unique as well. But they looked really cool. They looked great. Like, I saw those, and I was like, I sent them to Mrs. Troublemaker, who collects Living Dead dolls, and she was like, oh, those are wonderful. So those will be pre-ordered as well. All right, just got a couple more. Ghost Spider, or Spider-Gwen, as she is probably more popularly known. This one I wasn't quite sold on. And it will look better over time, because sometimes these bodysuit soft goods don't look their best in the first picture we see of a 112 figure. They always end up great. You can look at the Harley Quinn. There are, three different Harley Quinns now? Or are there two? I guess there are only two. The traditional comic Harley Quinn. Her suit is incredible. Space Ghost. Space Ghost has a very similar style suit. It looks great. So I'm not worried about this figure's costume looking right. But just the initial picture was not terribly inspiring. I'll be interested in seeing what accessories she comes with. But it's a fantastic costume design. It's one of my favorite modern costumes Well, it's probably the best modern costume that's happened. So I'll be keeping an eye on this one. I don't know that it'll be one I bring home, but I'll be watching the production. And then Gotham by Gaslight Batman. Looked awesome. Looked perfect. Looked great. I don't need it. If they want to do a Red Rain Batman, I'd be interested in that. But I don't know. Well, yeah, you know what? Even Red Rain. I've got a couple of good Red Rain ones. I don't know what other Batmans could be offered from Mezco that I would need, because I've got a lot of 112 Batmans. So this, I mean, it looks great. I just don't need it. And then finally, the last one I'm going to talk about today is Ultraman. I don't really have any sentimental attachment to Ultraman. I know that may be crazy to some of you who do, because Ultraman fans tend to be very loving of their character. But it looked cool. I'm curious to see how they handle the articulation, because he has very specific poses that have to be gotten exactly right. But it looked cool to me. I liked it. And then there was one more 112 Collective reveal, but you're going to have to tune in next week to the March episode of Audible Interlude, a G.I. Joe podcast, to hear about that one. And we will be discussing it with Kristian and Noel. So that does it for news. Let's move on with the show. You guys, it really does break my heart to not do a Toy Fair episode this year, but have faith that we will bring you all of the toy news as it happens as soon as possible. I have some very special toy dedicated episodes coming up, much like today's Super 7 episode. So stay tuned for those. I've got some special guests lined up, some really cool ideas that I think you're going to enjoy. So we're going to keep the variety and the fun coming on the Needless Things podcast. So stick with us. Tell your friends. Spread the word. That's the biggest thing you can do, because I want more people to know about this. I want more people watching the YouTube channel. I have lots of things I would like to do once the time is there for me to do them. And trust me when I tell you, you're going to want to be here, one of the ground supporters, I guess. So just stay tuned and spread the word. And now it is time for us to take a look at the incredible entity known as Super 7. Joining me tonight, straight off of the Audible Interlude podcast, fellow toy enthusiast and man of much knowledge as far as things plastic go. Please welcome to the show, Kristian Allen, a.k.a. Legion Cub.
Ooh, yes, a plethora of useless knowledge, am I?
Well, that's what Needless Things is all about, so this is perfect. I've been wanting to do this episode with you for a while, and at one point, it was a matter of, well, let's wait to sort of coincide. You know, I want something big coming from Super 7 so we can kind of just do a special Super 7 episode. And this was even before we were doing the G.I. Joe podcast. Like it had occurred to me, like at some point, well, even before Super 7 was going to be the topic, I wanted to have you on for a toy episode, but I wasn't sure what. And then it became clear that Super 7 would be something cool that you have probably more knowledge about Super 7 in general than I do, especially its history. But we're both enthusiastic about what the company is doing now.
Yeah, I think that everything happens for a reason. And we had that pause, and all of a sudden it was like the heavens opened up, a choir of angels came down and was like, let me bless you with Super 7 news.
Well, and that was it.
Big. Here you go.
We finally nailed a date down, and then something, I don't remember what it was, because so many freaking things have happened this year that have knocked recording times and whatever else out of sync. But yeah, we were going to record before all of the crazy announcements that have come from Super 7 over the past, well, since the beginning of the year, really. because I think we were going to do it back in December.
Yeah.
Or at least early January, but it was a while ago. But now we have not only a ton of new announcements, but the probably second biggest announcement that Super 7 has ever made, which we'll be saving for the end of the show. So anybody listening for Thunder Tank talk, don't worry, we're going to get there, but we're going to go in mostly chronological order to get there. And we've got to begin, if we're going to have a general conversation about Super 7, we've got to go back and start at the beginning, which I thought, just off of the top of my head, without having done any research, the first time we kind of casually talked about it, I was thinking that those reaction alien figures were kind of the first major thing that they had brought to the marketplace, but I was very wrong. Not just what you were talking about, but then there was something in 2010 that I found as well. But let's go back to the beginning, because you definitely schooled me on the origins of Super 7.
Yeah, so back in 2001, I was working part-time at a comic shop, Sci-Fi World, on International Drive in Orlando. Big touristy destination shop. And the manager there was big time into like the high-end vinyl figures and old school Japanese sofubi figures. And this is kind of when those designer vinyls were just starting to really pick up.
Yeah.
And so Super 7 had a magazine. That's all they were. It was Super 7 magazine dedicated to Japanese vinyl figures. And it wasn't just that. Like, I would flip through the magazine at work, but what got me to buy it was there was an issue with Gatchaman on the cover. And there was all this talk that Super 7 was going to start producing their own custom designer vinyls. And so there was, rumor that they were going to get the Gatchaman license. They were going to do some stuff with Micronauts, all kinds of crazy talk. But it was enough for us in the store to really latch on to this company. And the magazine, if you can get your hands on them, the pictures in it are great. And
I bet they're a pretty penny now.
It covers, at that time, the newer designer stuff that was coming out, but then, pictures of these rare, like, Ultraman and Mazinger vinyl toys that you don't see on eBay very often. So that was.
Oh, they're not that expensive. I'm looking at
really?
Super 7 magazine number 10, $8.
That's not bad at all.
No, I assumed they would be up, close to 100 or something now, being that they're the foundation of the company.
And I don't remember how many years the magazine lasted, but it kind of fell victim to what I call the anime crash, because there were so many, you had New Type and all these sort of Japanese culture magazines that were trying to ride the big anime wave.
Right.
And everything print-wise just sort of imploded at once. And I remember Super 7 coming out and being like, hey, we tried, and unfortunately the magazine is coming to an end, but, follow us on Facebook. We're still going to be because by this point they were making their own toys.
Right. They had offered their first figure they offered through the magazine before it died. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm looking right now, the first 10 issues are all on eBay for $8 each. So that's not bad. And I'll be honest, for anybody listening, if you're any kind of speculator, you got to think at some point those are going to be worth something.
You'd think, because the company, and we'll get into it, but this is the little company that could.
Yeah.
They started out in such a niche area, and I think that works to their favor, because every single property that they've gone for, they find that one little fandom group and are like, hey, we know how to make what you want to see because it's what we want to see.
And that's what it is they are the experts at servicing their customers, delivering exactly what that niche audience wants to see. I think that's the magic. I'm looking right now. Fortunately, now if anybody wants to go and read the entire history of the company, if you go to super7hq.com, they have a page that details everything. We're not going to run down all of it here because we want to get to toy talk, modern stuff. But it's worth noting there were 15 issues of the magazine. It ended in January of 2007, but then in October of 2007, they moved to full-size books, and their first release was Tokyo Underground, which came out in October of 2007.
I didn't know about the book.
And then there's follow-up book called Mook was released in 2008. So that they, 15 issues, considering, small press, independent release magazines. That's not bad. That's a nice little collection of stuff. I don't think Grand Royal, my favorite magazine in the world, the Beastie Boys magazine, I don't think it made it to 15 issues. So pretty good accomplishment right there for, as you said, the little toy company that could. The next thing I've got down here, and the one that I felt like, as we delved a little bit deeper, the thing I felt like I should have remembered off the top of my head, but I didn't, was in 2010, they released that Super Shogun Stormtrooper.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Right? Revolutionary.
Why was I thinking that happened after Aliens?
Right. Wow. I thought the same thing as well, but I think where it got mixed up in my head, the Super Shogun Stormtrooper, amazing piece, looks great, but as tempted as I was by it, and I remember that being offered in previews, and at one point I may have even had it like on my order form, because I'd go back and forth with stuff. I'd write everything down, then I'd be like, no, I don't need this. I'd go back and but so I remember that clearly. But I think the Stormtrooper didn't really catch my fancy quite as much as the Super Shogun Boba Fett that they put out years later. I think that might have even been like 2015 was the Boba Fett.
Okay. See, in my mind, it put the two of them together.
Yeah, the Stormtrooper was years before, and I think that was kind of, it was their first messing around with a licensed product, and it's pretty impressive that they went after the biggest license in the world first with that Stormtrooper. I would love to know the story behind how that came together, because it had to be a matter of somebody at Lucasfilm, because this is pre-Disney.
Mm-hmm.
So this had to be somebody at Lucasfilm who's just like, oh, I loved the Super Shoguns. Let's sign this deal. Let's make this happen. Because that, back even in 2010, the Star Wars licensing wasn't the same as it is today. Now, there's been the joke for years that you can buy Star Wars toilet paper, Star Wars spoons, Star Wars cereal, and to a certain extent that's been true. But over the last, since Disney came along, the license has been split up amongst so many different producers, between Hasbro and Pops and all kinds of custom toys now, Bandai and Medicom, and like all of these different things are coming out. But in 2010, it wasn't really like that. So for that Super Shogun Stormtrooper to happen is actually, looking back, pretty special. And I kind of wish I'd gotten one.
I do remember at the time that, and like I said, and the Boba Fett, and I have my Jumbo Machinder Great Mazinger, and around that same time there was sort of this wave of redoing the Shoguns, because you had companies that were putting out like redos of Garada 7 and Doubless and all these ones that you couldn't get. And I just remember being like, if I go down this rabbit hole at $200 a pop, it's going to add up. If only what I knew now.
Right.
For what we're paying.
Oh, dude, I look back on some of the things, and granted, situations change. We're all, I'm sure we all probably have a little more disposable income than we had, 10, 20 years ago, whatever. But I look back at previews, which is where, back then You had like, I don't even know if Media Play was still around in the early 2000s. How long did that last? I know it was gone by like 2005, right?
Oh, I have no clue.
But my personal main resource for non-mass market toys was previews. You order them from the comic book shop. And I look back at some of the things that I was like, oh, that's too expensive and didn't get. And I'm just kicking myself now, with not just those things being more valuable, but even if that something like that was re-released now, it would cost twice as much.
Yep.
And I've got one of the reissue. It's trans. When I was a kid, it was Transor Z.
Ah, yes.
But it's great Mazinger. Is that right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I got the reissue.
Does he have the V-shaped?
Yeah, and he's got the
little chest,
and he's got the little vehicle comes out of the top of his head.
Yeah,
he's black and light blue.
Yeah, he has swords on his hips.
He was the main one from the cartoon when I was the Transor Z cartoon when I was a kid. So I got that one because that had a big nostalgic appeal to me, and I never had any of the Super Shoguns when I was a kid.
Oh, we did. I was very fortunate.
They
did not survive childhood, though.
Oh, well, no. They're not something that big, and that it's not that they're fragile, but like the feet and the arms and those are all different pieces, and kids playing with that, those things are going to pop off. The stickers are going to get messed up. The little pieces, all the rockets are going to get lost. It's just going to happen. So that was that one. That Stormtrooper is actually probably the first time I was like, oh, Super 7, who's this? Who are these people? But then in 2013, and throughout this time, they're still releasing all kinds of different like kaijus and monsters and vinyl toys. Like they really gained steam with those original creations, Monster Family, Candy Kaiju, which I don't really have any recollection of, but they're doing their own thing and kind of, I think, slowly seeking out licenses because that's where you get established.
Yeah, you weren't finding them in even comic shops. If you were finding Super 7 merchandise, it was in either those designer vinyl stores, or at least here in Orlando, we had like 3 of them at the time. That's all they did. Or you would have some Japanese import shops.
Yeah,
that would carry them.
Stock that stuff.
Yeah, but you weren't finding comic shops that would take a chance on stocking this merchandise.
So, no, nobody stocked it. If you wanted it, you had to find it in the back of previews and order it for yourself. You wouldn't just walk in and see it.
Yeah, so when they finally started making their splash, they went, like you said, they went big. I mean, what they did after the Stormtrooper, I feel like is the first big announcement. Hey, look at us. We're not just vinyls.
I think that's where, if you asked the average toy collector, not average person on the street, because the average person on the street still would be like, Super 7, what's that? But if you ask the average toy collector who hadn't sat down and like done research and looked it up, I would imagine that Kenner Alien line would be the first thing that would pop into their head where they became aware of Super 7. And it was huge, man. It was 2013 San Diego Comic-Con, and they showed these. And you got to remember, to give some context for the listeners, now we live in a world where there are all kinds of different 5 points of articulation, retro action figure lines. This wasn't a thing then. Reaction hadn't happened yet because this was them inventing it. Funko didn't have reaction yet and hadn't applied every license into the world to that style. So it was pretty bold and interesting of them to offer these primitive action figures in the modern market. Because in 2013, you still had 3.75 inch Star Wars was still offering like the super articulated, now it's the vintage collection, but back then they had several different lines of super articulated figures in that scale. That's what the market was used to. So this was obviously them creating a whole new segment of the marketplace.
But also look at it in this context. By 2013, yeah, the internet, it existed. It's not quite what it is today.
Yeah.
Definitely more than what it was in the 90s. When those alien figures hit, you had a whole, I'm just going to say, generation of toy collectors that got their news from magazines. And it was always a huge deal whenever the magazines would do articles on unproduced and prototype figures, because information just wasn't readily out there. So you spend years knowing that these prototypes existed. The molds were out there. Oh my gosh, what we could have had, what we could have had, what we could have had. So when they said, okay, we are making these figures that you have built up in your head, you can now own it. It was massive. Like, we used to have people coming into the shop asking about it, and they weren't like the regular people that you would see.
Right.
So I feel like who knows, at the time, they probably viewed it as a one-off, but it was, if they were going to choose something to start with, I think going that route of something that had such a legacy and demand, it was huge.
Well, and that's actually a very good point that I hadn't really considered, is that if they had just thrown out, these style figures of some property that had never had them, it might have done all right. But the fact that this was based in something that was real, they weren't just making these figures up like, hey, which is what those lines are doing now. But back then in 2013, they weren't just saying, hey, imagine if Alien had gotten a Star Wars style line. This is what it would have looked like. No, this is what it did look like. It just didn't happen, but we're making it happen. That magic is what launched the reaction monolith that still exists to this day, although in a very different form.
And I know the Aliens line isn't as huge as it was, but when you go back and you think about it, not just the figures, it was so big. They had a play set, which you never see. And then they started with the mystery eggs. Like, it just grew and grew and grew. And that was not anything you had seen from any of the smaller toy companies. When you think of the companies at the time, like Palisades, so many of them aren't around anymore.
None of them are around anymore.
And that's probably why.
Soda, state-of-the-art toys that did... what else did they do? I know they did the figures for the Tomb Raider movie.
Oh, yeah.
That are still some of the best figures I own. But that Tomb Raider license, I think they got a couple other licenses, but they just didn't make it. Just like, Palisades and so many other companies that got started around that time that put out some really cool products, but just couldn't seem to find their footing to hang out. And of course, this was years before Super 7, was really doing their thing. This was early 2000s. And what's funny is, like, NECA started up right around the same time.
Yep.
They were 2000, but they did find their way. They did find the magic formula to have that longevity that so many of the other companies didn't. And it's funny to me to think of, in modern terms, while you don't walk into Walmart and Target and find Super 7 products like you do with NECA products, although there are some in there.
But there was a time when you did. Because after the Alien figures, when it was blowing up, and then they started doing reaction, and I remember, they weren't doing massive releases, multiple lines of reactions every year. So when it would be like a few. And so when one would be announced, people were excited, whether you liked the movie, you liked the characters or not. And I think because they were blowing up so quick and they were such a small company, in order to handle the distribution, do you remember they teamed up with Funko?
Well, I think Funko actually licensed the reaction style and name from Super 7. I think they were actually producing the figures.
They were producing them. I
believe so.
Because I remember when they partnered up, all of a sudden, on the end caps at Target, you would have reaction figures.
Yeah.
And I thought that was brilliant.
That was all due to Funko and they're already having inroads into retail because of the Pops.
Right.
Like they already had those connections. Oh, that's not what I meant to hit. Do we have internet resources to tell the story of Super 7 and Funko? No, I'm not seeing anything, but yeah, I do believe that
really just found information about when the partnership ended.
Yeah, I didn't see any. I don't have anything in my notes specifically about how it got together. All I've got is that it looks like it lasted from maybe 2014 to 2016.
Yep.
Which is when Super 7 relaunched reaction figures with Universal Monsters, Masters of the Universe, Street Fighter 2, and The Worst, which are some fantastic
the
figures.
Original, yeah.
Yeah, their original property, which they've tons of characters, lots of different colorways, which is one of the things that I think Super 7 does really well. You mentioned the mystery eggs with the aliens. I love how they use variants because they do glow in the dark, they'll do glitter, they'll do color swirls, they'll do translucent, all kinds of crazy things with certain of the figures that to me makes them exciting and lends itself to collectability. They did variations of the Xenomorph and what's his face? Who gets the alien on his face? Ian Holm. His character's name just fell right out of my head. Anyway.
Bishop.
No, Bishop Flint's hit, right? Is it no, Ash is the robot.
Right. Oh, then yeah, it's Bishop.
No, Bishop is the one from the Aliens.
Ian Holmes. Gosh.
We're so old.
Right. Well, while you're looking at that, I give them.
Oh, you're right. He is Ash. No, wait. No, Ash is Ian Holm. It's not Ian Holm. It's John, the Doctor. This is very entertaining for everybody listening at home, shouting at whatever they're listening, like shouting the name.
I give them credit for trying to make the most money off those molds that they can by producing
John Hurt as Kane.
John Hurt.
So anyway, what I was saying is they did variations of the alien and Kane based on unproduced movie posters. So you have a card back that's this unproduced movie poster and the figure is colored to look like that movie poster. It's stuff like that they're so clever about with their variants and different things that they do of these exact same mold, but just in different colors. And those card backs that to me are what make those $10 action figures $15, $18. So now that we figured out the mystery of John Hurt as Kane,
now that they're taking away our alien geek cards.
Yeah, seriously. So less interested in Funko doing reaction figures because they did literally every license under the sun. More interested in getting back to Super 7, which in the meantime, in 2015, Super 7 brought Muscle back. Millions of unusual small creatures lurking everywhere. I can remember that, but I can't remember Kane.
The important stuff.
Right. But that was a result of their partnership with Mattel to continue the Masters of the Universe Classics line, which was met with some controversy. How, at the time, how immersed were you in Masters of the Universe Classics?
Oh, I was all in.
Yeah.
I was a subscriber all the way to the bitter end. And when they announced that it was ending, I breathed a sigh of relief. And then when they said, oh, but wait, there's more, we're going to Super 7, I had no clue. I mean, obviously we had already seen the reaction Motu figures from them. But I had no idea how they were going to tackle classics. And when they made that first announcement of the Ultimates, I was like, oh, okay, I am on board with this. Unfortunately, I think the cards were stacked against them because by the end of Maddie, the Masters, the Classics fandom, I guess I should say, the online Classics fandom, they were very particular, very picky. Mattel made some mistakes along the way, and these people were expecting Super 7 to come in and be the second coming. And truth is, they were still a small company.
Yeah.
I'm somebody that collected third-party Transformers for years and years and years. So, you understand there's growing pains, there's QC issues. You're getting the figures that you want in the scale that you want them. You're getting the stuff that the major toy companies are not making.
Right. And if you weren't getting these figures, you wouldn't be getting them at all. Nobody else is going to step up to do it.
Right. So, do I think that brittle necks and stuff like that should happen? Absolutely not. But I do think that Super 7 has had really good customer service. I think over the years, and we can get into it when we get into Thundercats, they've improved leaps and bounds and done things for the people that buy their products that Mattel never did when they've made mistakes.
Oh yeah, 100%. There's a big one we'll be talking about shortly.
So
that I just found out about. I had no idea about. But we'll get to it. I pretty much bailed when things shifted. I took the opportunity to say this toy line is complete. I wasn't interested in the Filmation stuff. At the time, and it's funny to say now considering what I'm paying for Super 7 Ultimates figures, but at the time the price point for their Ultimates was too much for me. Not like financially, but just intellectually.
Oh yeah, no, I understand. I thought it was a good opportunity for people to get figures that Mattel was not going to do another run of.
And in some cases didn't get quite right the first time.
Yeah.
And I looking back, I really wish that I had gotten a Faker and a Tila. Because the Goofy net, now have you seen one of the Ultimate Tilas in person?
That's actually the one that I own because I came into Classics after I came into Classics. I fell down that rabbit hole when they started releasing the classics, the DC classics and Master of the Universe classics 2-packs.
Yeah. Because you could just go to Toys R Us and buy them.
Right.
And then you see how good they are.
Yeah. And so Teela was one of those figures that I was not at that time willing to pay the eBay money for.
Right.
And so the Super 7 version of Teela is the one that's on my shelf.
From what I understand, she's got a much better neck. And like every time I look at the Teela on my shelf, I'm like, eh. And it's funny you mention those the Masters DC 2-packs, because that's the He-Man that I have is the one from that He-Man Superman 2-pack. Because when I started with classics, very first one I bought was Scareglow, because I just had to have Scareglow. And I was like, I'm just going to buy him because he's a glow-in-the-dark skeleton with a purple cape. And how do I not buy that? So I got that, and I was like, this figure is absolutely great. And I think they offered up, you know how they would do their older stock sales? Like they would, for instance, Scareglow would go up for sale as a new figure, but at the same time they would offer, we've still got these in stock that we're offering. And I think after Scareglow, they re-offered Trapjaw and Skeletor. Trapjaw is my favorite. Skeletor, who doesn't want a Skeletor? And then that was all downhill from there. I think I ended up subbing the next year, because Scareglow might have been October. I think he came out in October of 2009 or 10 maybe, or maybe even something like that. And then within, by the sometime next year, I signed up for the sub, and that was it. Or no, maybe the next year I went through and just bought them each month as they came out and decided that was too much of a pain in the butt and subbed up the year after that. Maybe that's what I did. But anyway, we're not here to talk about Masters Universe Classics from Mattel anyway.
But Super 7 did something. I mean, they didn't have a sub per se, but they let you know that, in order, we're not saying that there's a bare minimum that has to be reached. We're not going to scare you like Maddie did.
Right.
But if you want this figure, you have to buy the wave. We can't sit on stock.
Which turned me off.
And
I've noticed that they don't do that anymore. Now you can go and buy just one figure. Like you don't have to buy all 4 Thundercats or both of the Good Brothers or whatever the case may be. You can buy just one figure from whatever wave or set or whatever it is.
Well, that's good.
They don't require, because that more than anything is what kind of killed my interest in Super 7, because they were offering these sets of 4 figures. And I think the first 2 they offered, I really only wanted one. And that was what made the decision. Well, you know what? I guess I'm just done with this.
Well, I didn't get the first wave mainly for that reason. And I am also one of those that, again, not Super 7 having not done something like that. I wanted to make sure what is the quality going to be? What, and I remember when those reviews first started coming out, there were paint issues and plastic issues. And I thought that they did a good job addressing each one. When the second wave was announced, it had, I wanted all the figures in it except for one. So I was like, all right, I'm in. And I could not be happier. I can't, same thing with my Teela. I can't really tell that big of a difference. There's a little bit of a plastic quality issue difference between what Mattel did and what Super 7 had, but not drastic.
Nothing that you're going to look at the shelf and be like, that's a different figure.
No, not at all. Yeah. Not at all. I, much like you, I had no interest in the Filmation figures. So when those started coming out and, they had the shiny plastic issue or whatever, I was like, oh well.
I've heard about this, but it does not affect me.
It doesn't affect me. Yeah. So, but it was enough. I feel like if Reaction really put them on the map, Classics is sort of what got fandoms
Yeah.
You know, that Motu fandom that was just like, you know, you make it, we'll buy it. We're going to bitch about it endlessly once it comes out.
Yeah.
But we're going to buy it.
Well, Classics was the bridge from then to where they are now with Ultimates.
Yeah.
100%.
And they've improved. I think,
yes.
you know, every time you see a new press release from them, you're just, wow.
Well, and expanded. It's unbelievable how many different Ultimates, because I really wasn't considering everything that they've announced, because personally, I'm collecting the Thundercats Ultimates and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Ultimates, which neither one of those had I planned to collect from the start, because when I was a kid, I watched Thundercats every day that it was on. I wanted the toys and only ever had a Lion-O. So I never immersed myself into the toy line, or was able to. So it doesn't have that same nostalgic connection as G.I. Joe, because having the toys makes all the difference in the world. And then they put Thundercats on Hulu, and I start watching them, and I'm like, this might actually be the best 80s cartoon. Like, I'm watching each episode, storytelling wise, character design wise, consistency. Every once in a while, there's an episode that looks like it was animated by like a different animation house. You're like, what is happening? Why does this one not look good? But they always recover. And just the world building is incredible. So I got real itchy, man. And I went and I looked on Big Bad Toy Store, and they had them for just retail price. And I ordered that first wave. And when they came, I immediately ordered wave 2. And then I think I got wave 3 direct from Super 7. Or no, ordered wave 2 and 3 from Big Bad. Didn't order Jaga, who's in wave 3, because if I'm getting Jaga, I want a Ghost of Jaga.
Which you know they're going to do.
You absolutely. They did glow-in-the-dark Mum-Ra, which isn't even a thing. So they're 100% going to do like a translucent, sparkly Jaga. I don't need an actual Jaga, so I didn't order that one. But I ordered everything else. And then where the Ninja Turtles got me, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 80s line, the toy line, was what replaced G.I. Joe for me. I went from Joe, which it makes no sense at all, because I lost interest in G.I. Joe because it got too wacky. So then I went to Ninja Turtles.
But it started out wacky.
Yeah, I guess.
At least G.I. Joe started out real military and then went wacky as time went on. Which the whole premise of Ninja Turtles is...
Right. They start from wacky. So those toys, I loved them. I had tons and tons and tons of them. I mean, I certainly wasn't a completist, because it gets to the point where you're looking at like baseball fan Michelangelo and you're like, you know, I don't need that one. But I stuck with them almost to the end, buying one of each character. And then when I saw that the Ultimates were not based on the cartoon, we're not based on the movie like the NECA figures, we're not based on the comic books, but we're literally modern updates of those toys like the Masters of the Universe Classics, I had to check them out, and now I'm all in.
And now my younger brother was the one that was into Turtles.
Okay.
So I did play with them plenty. I don't have quite the same emotional attachment to them, but those Ultimate figures are just stunning. And for me, when they did Motu, you know, the Masters of the Universe Classics used the same buck.
Right.
It was basically, let's change some armor, let's, you know, have a new head, and there you go.
It's either reptile, beast, or human.
Right. Thundercats, is
similar.
Similar. It looks like as the waves have gone on, they're steering away from that.
They definitely are. I mean, if even looking at Panthro and Lion-O side by side, Panthro has lots of new parts because he's shorter. He's different.
But Ninja Turtles, that line,
yes,
is, with the exception of the Turtles, no one shares parts that I can tell. It is all new tooling. So that's not cheap for them to make, but they're putting that kind of dedication to it. And
when they announced that they were doing Ninja Turtles as Ultimates, in your head you're like, so what? It's going to be like He-Man bodies with turtle shells and 3-fingered hands and feet.
Yeah, dude, seriously. I'm so eagerly anticipating their Silverhawks line because that was my cartoon more so than Thundercats. But in my head, I still cannot do anything but picture how they're trying to fit the Thundercats on He-Man bodies. And I'm like, no, this doesn't work. But I know they've proven that that's not what they're going to do.
If that happens to be appropriate, then they'll do it. But if not, you're getting all new tooling. Now, the one place where I ran into a little resistance with that style or theory or whatever, is the Conan movie figures. Those are the ones, and I have not seen them in person. Full disclosure, I don't know what they look like in person. But to me, I don't know. I have trouble with it because when I see pictures of them online and I see that Schwarzenegger head or that James Earl Jones head on the Masters Universe body, it doesn't look right to me. But I have the Masters Universe movie figures that are
on that.
They are, quote unquote, they're William Stout figures, quote unquote, movie real heads on classics bodies, and they look fine. The Dolph, obviously it's not Dolph Lundgren's likeness, but it's pretty Lundgren-esque.
Right.
And it works. it is.
That needs to be a new verb or adjective that I use.
But how often would you really be able to use it? Because what is Lundgren?
I can surprise you.
But and it looks great. It looks fantastic. So I've got to think putting an Arnold Schwarzenegger head is also going to be totally fine. But just the pictures online looked odd to me. But here's where they got me. Did you see the most recent Conan figures?
Oh, yeah.
Thulsa Doom and Conan in the War Paint. Oh, dude, they blew me away. I ordered them immediately. I couldn't help it. That Thulsa Doom has the potential to be figure of the year, I think. I think it's an early contender.
Mm-hmm.
With the snake head and the snake with the headdress on top and the, oh my gosh. And
it's been a while since I've had like a jaw drop figure.
Yes.
And that was one.
Yeah.
Like I've seen stuff that definitely, listeners, that makes me go, oh wow, that's really cool. Or, oh, I'm really excited. But this was like,
yeah.
What?
Yeah. Whoa. And you keep going back and forth between the pictures.
Yeah.
Like, here. What is, that's
like, it made me look up clips of that specific scene in the movie and be like, they translated it like beautifully.
Like they literally couldn't have made a more perfect figure as far as the accessories and everything that it comes with, and the look of it. They couldn't have done a better job in the style. It's amazing. Like, and here's the thing. Here's the big difference. I was going to mention a while ago that to me, it's weird that NECA and Super 7 in my head kind of run parallel. They're offering different things for different collectors, but as far as having sort of genre stuff for collectors, I put them basically in the same place, even though NECA I think is a bigger company and obviously has much larger distribution. But I look at the Ultimates Conan figures and I think these are fun. I know they're good toys because we've had classics forever. I've got Ultimates. As a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, I reviewed the second wave of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Ultimates. They're fun to play with. They're sturdy. And if NECA put out that Thulsa Doom, it would look incredible, but it wouldn't be any fun.
No, it would fall apart if you tried to move
well,
any of the limbs.
Let's not totally bury NECA, because they've done a lot better in recent years, and I still love them. And
no, their stuff looks good, but it's not. I had one of the Godzillas because I didn't want to invest in the monster art figures because by this point they're so expensive online.
And again, on the shelf, if you're putting beautiful. Godzilla on the shelf, then the NECA and the monster arts, you're not really gonna see a lot.
But playability wise, unfortunately, NECA doesn't do it for me. It's almost I listen, they're more posable than a McFarlane figure, listeners. I'm not saying they're that bad. They're not Stactions, but I'm with all the announcements that we'll get into, that Super 7 is done, if they say we're making this toy, you can take it out of the package and actually play with it.
And with their sales model, you're not going to have to worry about whether or not you're even going to be able to get it.
Yeah.
Which is a big factor for me.
You might be waiting a long time.
Yeah, which is fine.
Is fair.
We'll talk about that in a second. I want to say one last thing about NECA. NECA's modern figure, their ultimate line, very, very posable. It's the posability is not the issue, it's the durability, because I am scared to bend the joint on a NECA figure without heating it up first, because I've had so many pieces just tear off, break off right out of the box. That's my biggest issue, is I'm so scared of even touching NECA figures without taking precautions. Right. Whereas with Super 7, pull them out of the box, start posing them. I've run into a couple of loose joints here and there. I think they're still working on those things, but I have yet to have a Super 7 figure just break on me.
Yeah,
that's a big difference. Let's talk a little bit about how Super 7 sells these things. For the listeners, if you don't know, pre-order is the word that they use, but I actually prefer to think of it as made to order, because they announce the product and then they have a sales window, typically about a month, where you can go and order as much as you want of the product you want. If you just want one, you order one and you're in. The problem that people seem to be having is that this takes about a year between paying and delivery. But what people aren't taking into consideration is this is the same length of production time as any other toy line. It's just that Super 7 is showing you the product earlier in order to get your investment. If Hasbro was doing the same thing with the G.I. Joe Classified series, then we would be seeing pictures of the figures months before they've actually been showing them to us, because they need us to buy in prior to the actual production. And that's the only difference. It's any figure or toy takes 12 to 16 months from concept to shelf. That's the average time. So it's not that Super 7 takes an extra long amount of time to make things, although lately, because of COVID and because of all kinds of other production things that have been going on, yes, this last year, everything has been jacked up. But you're buying in earlier and you're getting a guaranteed product, as opposed to 3 months, 6 months before it's actually going to be on shelves. Hey, check this out. Pre-order it now, and maybe you get in to get that pre-order, maybe you don't. Maybe the pre-order gets canceled or delayed 12 times, or you don't know that you're going to get the product. But with Super 7, every single time you're going to end up with that product on your shelf. It may take a little bit longer, but you're going to get it. And to me, that's worth it.
And I'm totally okay with it. Sometimes you never forget that you've ordered something, but that time kind of goes by and you just sort of like that urge isn't there for it. And then all of a sudden you get that email like, it's shipped, it's on its way to you. And you're like, oh my gosh, yes, I get to get all excited for it.
Yeah.
again.
I get to see this final product that, and see what it's actually going to be. And that's another part of the excitement is those early production images or the prototypes or whatever it is we get to take a look at. It's going to change, and Super 7 is going to update you along the way.
Yeah, they're really good about that.
Yeah, they're as transparent as they can be. And if you go and look on YouTube, some of the interviews with Brian Flynn, where he's very open about, we'll go ahead and say the Thunder Tank, we'll be talking about it in just a couple of minutes here. He's very open about the process. They have already made the decision to change a couple of things based on customer response. I'm very impressed with how they do business just in general.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So in the Ultimates line, we're going to come back around to Thundercats, obviously. I also got to mention that they're getting into wrestling figures now. They launched their sort of wrestling series with the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast. Matt Cardona and Brian Myers are getting incredible looking action figures, probably going to be the best wrestling figures on the market. And they've got something to compete with Jazzware's AEW figures, but they look awesome. And then we've got the Good Brothers, Doc Gallows and Luke Anderson. And Luke Anderson, Carl Anderson. You guys, my brain is falling apart. So they and their New Japan figures are hitting any day now, apparently. And those actually, I misspoke. Those were the first wrestling figures that got announced. But if we can make a little joke at Super 7's expense, that's the line that most people think of when they think of delays, because wrestling figure fans are impatient and petty. So any of them that ordered those New Japan figures, I'm sure, are just fuming now because we as collectors aren't always used to different business models like this, and Super 7's doing something different and new, and it's going to take some adjustment to get used to them. And then we've already talked about the Conan line. They announced the other day Godzilla Ultimates.
Yes.
What drives me crazy, because we know how picky Toho can be about licensing other monsters.
Right.
So
I have seen an interview with him.
Okay.
I think it was the one with Pixel Dan. I could be wrong. But he did say, he wouldn't say which monsters or which kaiju they got the rights to, but they did get the rights to other kaiju because he had specific kaiju in mind that if he could not get them, he would not do the line.
Okay.
So that has me
huge.
So excited because here in the States, we don't get, you'll get
the other monsters.
You'll get a Ghidorah, a Mothra, a Rodan.
Well, if you're lucky, though.
If you're lucky.
Because NECA hasn't even been able to touch those. No. All we've gotten from, and look, NECA has done some awesome Godzilla figures. I've got a few of them, but right now, any Target you walk into, there are a dozen different Godzilla figures, but they're all Godzilla.
Yeah.
And my thought when Super 7 announced Godzilla Ultimates was like, if you can only do Godzilla, what's even the point?
If knowing Super 7 and thinking back to their early magazines, my Brian, if by some chance you're listening, my hopes are that we are finally getting a Jet Jaguar. I can totally see that being
that would be perfect.
One of the figures that they were going after. A Hedorah, he just strikes me as the sort of person that, and again, based off of some of the stuff I saw in the earlier magazines, they don't necessarily go after just what John Q. Public thinks of.
Just the fact that they're making figures of the guys from the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast shows they recognize niche fandoms and they're interested in doing things that are not necessarily going to please the widest audience.
Yeah.
Here's something I would love to see. Years ago, some company, I always want to say it was Medicom, and I feel like I'm corrected every time I say that it was Medicom, but some company did a line of Godzilla figures, but it was literally 12-inch like G.I. Joes in a Godzilla suit.
I don't remember those. That sounds like something Marmot would do.
Maybe. You know what? That might be right.
I do remember in the early 2000s, I think it was, Microman did a line which was the Microman figures as the stuntmen. So it would come with the rubber suit.
Okay.
That then you could take your Microman figure apart and put him in. So they did Godzilla, Ghidra, they did a Jet Jaguar, a Megalon, they did a Gamera, but we're talking 3 3/4 inch scale.
Right. I think you're right in that Marmot are the ones that I'm thinking of, but at least we've narrowed it down that it's a company that begins with M. It's either Medicom, Marmot, or Microman. Although I guess Microman is technically not a company, but whatever.
Yeah.
Move on. But I would love for Super 7 to do something similar.
Something like that, yeah.
That would be very cool. And then King Diamond. We're getting a King Diamond Ultimate figure, which is wild. Papa Emeritus from Ghost, and I can only hope we'll get the Nameless Ghouls as well. Or is it Faceless Ghouls? The Ghouls. I can't remember the name of anything this episode. I know nothing about pop culture. I'm a blank slate. But anyway, Papa's on the way with great looking soft goods. And then this one, I'm really curious to see. Well, I don't think you and I have even talked about it yet. What do you think of these Transformers Ultimates? Well, before we get to that, where are you on just the concept of Transformers that don't transform?
I mean, I remember Action Force back in the 90s.
Action Masters.
Action Masters.
I remembered the name of something. I'm so proud of myself.
There are Transformer fans that probably love that concept.
Yeah.
Probably great for photography. But it's not I'm a terrible fan in that I usually don't go for the figures that look like the cartoons.
No, I mean, but that's a thing. If that's not your aesthetic, then it just isn't. And I also totally understand the fans who, I mean, look, the line's called Transformers. It's not called Big Colorful Robots.
But I said it, I know a lot of times, but in the interviews, I give Brian credit for saying, we have to make an Optimus because that's when people think of Transformers, that's what they're going to buy.
Yeah.
Is Mattel going to give you the Optimus on a surfboard?
Well, Mattel's not going to give you any Optimus Primes.
So Hasbro, oh my God.
We're the worst.
I am like, listeners, this is why I drink during the G.I. Joe podcast.
Can we just erase this episode?
But they're doing characters like Bombshell, stuff like that if by some crazy chance, and I don't think the mass retail line is going to put out many waves. I could be wrong, but he's saying, hey, here's the figures that if by some crazy chance you're a fan of this figure, you're going to get a chance to get it.
Well, I am a fan of non-transforming Transformers, but only in the event that they are meant to look like the animation, like that, because that's why else would you want that? Because you really can't achieve that exact 1984 cartoon look with a transforming robot. You can kind of get it, but you can't get that exact Optimus. It just doesn't work. So I like Action Masters are okay. I loved Heroes of Cybertron, the little PVC figures.
Those I can get into. it's action figures of them that.
Well, and I even I was very tempted because I every few years I'll dive into Transformers again and lose my mind and buy like 20 or 30 Transformers, and I'll be like, what am I doing? And I'll sell them all because I can't I just can't keep up with Transformers. I can't. But they got me with War for Cybertron. Like, as soon as I saw those, they looked like the classic designs. They had incredible paint jobs, nice transformations, the most intuitive transformations since I was a kid, I think. And then I was like, what am I doing? I can't get into this. I've had like Omega Supreme pre-ordered, and that was the point where I was like, no, stop this.
Stop.
And then I'm in Walmart last November, December maybe, and I saw those red figures, the non-transforming 6-inch scale, basically like Marvel Legends, Star Wars Black Series, but Transformers. And they looked incredible. And I was like, oh man, I really want these, but I'm not going to do it. Not getting back into Transformers. And I'm very proud of myself because I didn't buy them, but I have not seen them since. I saw them one day. I saw them in 2 different Walmarts. Haven't seen them since at all. And I'm wondering if that's dead and this is basically the follow-up. Like, is Hasbro licensing that concept out to Super 7 now rather than doing that Red series themselves? And I haven't read anything to that effect, but it would seem to be the case.
Interesting.
So we've had a great Super 7 conversation here. Did you have any notes or anything else that you want to throw out?
Since we were talking about Ultimates, something that really hasn't gotten a lot of press since they did the pre-orders, and I think should be hitting soon, that I thought was big for them was the Disney Ultimates.
Oh, you're right. I totally
because that Disney market is a whole other beast,
right?
On its own, and again, they threw in Sorcerer Mickey because iconic. People are going to want a Mickey, but then they throw in, all the other characters.
Well, Prince John,
which is the one I pre-ordered.
Man, that's the one that almost got me because I would love to have a set of Robin Hood figures.
Yeah.
And I didn't do it. I can't do it, man. I can't get into another line of Ultimates. And the problem is with Disney, that's literally just a never-ending fountain.
Luckily, over the years, I am not about quantity in my collections. I only need 1 or 2 of a figure, so I don't have to get all the Disney Ultimates. But getting Prince John, if they gave us a Robin Hood and a Little John, I'm good. I'm done.
But how do you, if they then follow up with Marion, they Friar, like, how do you avoid those if you've already got a few? And here's the thing with Disney. Even if you cherry pick, and granted, at the rate Super 7 releases these, it seems to be maybe 2 waves a year, maybe. So it's pretty slow release rate. But with Disney, even if you cherry pick a Disney Ultimates line, there's going to be so much that you're going to want because they're drawing from all of the Disney animation, like Sword in the Stone, Black Cauldron.
I would be in. But if that was to happen, then I would have to make a decision. Do I keep my pops from those movies, or do I say I'm keeping the pops and not going with the Ultimates because I don't need
both representation,
multiple Black Cauldron figures,
and that's where I am with that. Is the pops that we've got are all things that are either particularly bizarre to have as an adorable little figure, or things that just aren't available in other figure form.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's if I'm choosing between like a NECA or an Ultimate or a Black Series or whatever the case may be, and a pop, the pop ain't gonna win.
But even with Silverhawks, I doubt I'll be completely 100% all in. for all the main birds, absolutely. Stargazer, he's probably teetering. Certain villains I'll want, certain villains,
Yeah.
So that's not as bad of a struggle for me. It used to not be, believe me.
Well, now I think we got to talk about the Thunder Tank.
Yeah.
It is the first vehicle that Super 7 is creating for the Ultimates line. Not the biggest thing they've offered. Obviously, that's Snake Mountain, which we totally didn't talk about.
Oh, yeah.
But we don't really have to, because you can go to the Needless Things YouTube channel and see my tour of Snake Mountain.
He lives in it now.
Yeah, I'm actually inside Snake Mountain right now as we speak.
It is massive.
And you can also find lots of different Super 7 and other toy line reviews on the Needless Things YouTube channel. But the Thunder Tank, announced just a couple of weeks ago, with just initially a picture of the Thunder Tank with the glow-in-the-dark eyes. And then I think it was 2 days later, the full announcement. The pre-order is running from February 2nd until April 2nd. They did a 2-month window for this one because it is such a big item, and they want to have enough time. Honestly, I think they want to have enough time to respond to people with things like the depth of the mechanisms behind the treads, which is one of the first things that they've addressed, saying that there's sculpted detail on the tank itself, but that the treads are so thick you can't see it. So they're pulling that out a little bit. But this is a $450 item, $40 shipping, which is not unreasonable. But the way that it was explained is, look, Snake Mountain is one big giant mold with a few extra pieces. The Thunder Tank has tons of working parts, lots of little pieces, lots of different tooling. It is technically a more expensive proposition. And unlike the Razor Crest, which sold like 26,000 units, the Thunder Tank, they'll be thrilled if they get close to 2,000 units. Mm-hmm. So there is a huge difference in fandoms. There's a huge difference in expected sell-through. This thing, again, and I say this all the time with toys. I've said it about exclusives. I said it earlier about the Super 7 picking up the classics. It's either this or you don't get it. Those are your options. Nobody else is making a Thunder Tank in scale with these Thundercats Ultimates. A Thunder Tank that's, 22 inches long and 13 inches wide, something like that.
Yeah.
It's in 9 inches high.
It holds 6 7-inch figures.
Well, no, it has seating for 6 7-inch figures,
true.
But then it's got a giant cargo bay in front of them where you could probably pile 10 more in there. It's crazy. The profile of this thing fits 4 of the original LJN Thunder Tanks.
Yeah.
And look, you guys have heard all of this stuff. If you watch the video with Pixel Dan, which you should, it's very informative. You've seen all this information out there. We just want to kind of give you our personal thoughts in response to it. I have not ordered yet because the deal I made with myself, I've got a pile of stuff sitting right to the right of me right now that are extras or things that I decided that I don't want or need, and that if I can sell enough to pay for the Thunder Tank before the pre-order ends, then I will get it. Because I know what happened to me with Snake Mountain. I didn't think I wanted it, and then I ended up way over. Well, at the time, I mean, that's what you had to pay for it. So I don't feel like I overpaid for it, but I could have paid a lot less for it if I'd just gone ahead and admitted to myself that I wanted it.
Right.
What was your initial thought when you saw they were doing a Thunder Tank? Well, first of all, we didn't even know it was going to be for the Ultimates. There was a possibility it was going to be for the reaction figures.
Which is what I thought it was going to be. You kept seeing these little hints, and I thought, from a price perspective, there is no way this is going to be for the big line. This is going to be reaction Thunder Tank, or it's going to be like a scaled replica. Like, we're going to find out that, not Hot Wheels, but something on a larger scale. Like, oh, now they're getting into this.
Well, kind of like what Hasbro did with that Plasma Series Ecto 1.
Right.
That's its 1/18th scale to go in a line full of 12 scale figures.
So,
which is bizarre.
When it dropped that it was for the Ultimates, my price point was way off, because I was thinking, okay, what's going to be the breaking point for people? What are they going to try to keep the cost around to? And listeners, like we said, you should listen to the Pixel Dan interview, because not just the discussion about the Thunder Tank, but the discussion they have about the process of making toys and the amount of molding and parts and pieces that go into it. It was eye-opening for me, and I thought I already knew everything there was to know under the sun.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I felt like I had a pretty good grasp on production and tooling and stuff like that. But Brian Flynn really lays it out in this in a way that I had not heard before.
But to be devil's advocate, watching the video and knowing the price tag, there is a part of me that goes, as adult collectors, what are most people going to do with that Thunder Tank? It's great that it comes with all these parts and pieces and has movable parts and all of that. But I can't tell you how many vehicles and play sets I have that just sit on the shelves.
Right.
And any action features that they have, I'm never using. So there is a part of me that wonders, could you scale it down? Could you take this away in order to get the price point down? But his video did a lot to explain why even that isn't as feasible.
Well, here's how I look at it. Because I'm still actively collecting Star Wars, and I've got I don't have the most recent vintage collection Millennium Falcon, but I've got the 2010 version that's
nice.
Basically the same thing.
Yeah.
So that is probably the best toy in my collection. Even over the Sail Barge, even over Snake Mountain, that Millennium Falcon, I'm going to come back to it every time.
That is my biggest regret when it came out, not getting it at the time.
It's incredible. And for anybody listening, if you stumble across one of the Galaxy's Edge versions that Target had recently, just get it. Figure out a way to pay for it and get it. You won't regret it. But anyway, that Millennium Falcon came out. And then a few years ago, Hasbro tried something a little different. They released a Millennium Falcon that was just a shell, just an exterior. No figures went in it. It was huge. It was probably twice as big as this one, which is scale-wise more accurate than this one. Mm-hmm. Had I wouldn't say it's as detailed as this one, but it had a ton of detail. It looked good. I kind of wanted one, not for the price point, but I think that's what we would be looking at with this Thunder Tank. Is we're either going to get this at this price, or just basically a shell to stick on the shelf, but that probably still would have been $150,
if not more. Yeah,
right.
To be in scale with 7-inch figures,
right?
We're going to be paying.
And as a collector, even though I know I'm going to find the right pose for that thing, I'm not going to use both of the cockpits that it comes with, or canopies. It comes with a closed canopy and the translucent canopy for the underwater action. Certainly not putting this thing underwater. I know I'm not going to have all those pieces on display, but knowing that I do have them, knowing that they're options, is just part of the appeal to me. It's the same thing as the Ultimates figures themselves. I'm going to put one set of hands on them and the rest are going in a bag, but I want to have those other hands.
Right.
I want to have that extra head. I want to have just in doing the Wave 2 Ninja Turtles reviews, that little, the sprue that it comes with, that's the classic weapons rack with all the weapons attached. I'm not going to use that, but I love that it's in there. And you know what? If it made it cost $5 more to stick that thing in there, that's fine, because again, it's staying in the box. I'm not displaying it, but it just makes me happy knowing that Super 7 is so into this stuff and so into making fans smile that they do stuff like that, or they know they need to put the Thundrillium in with the Thunder Tank. Like, that stuff just makes me happy. I love it.
Right.
It's part of the price tag to me.
And unlike, I think, and listeners, correct me if I'm wrong, off the top of my head, I can't think of another toy company that does payments, because they know, like with the Thunder Tank, you can pay a deposit.
Yeah.
And then they have the remainder split up. I think it was like over 4 months.
Yeah.
And then it's paid off. So instead of having to drop $500 all at once, you're going to pay $100 something a month. I know right now, the way the world is, that can still sting for a lot of people. But for
at least
others, it does make it doable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they did that with their Masters of the Universe Classics figures. You had the option, since you had to buy, the whole wave, you had the option. You could pay for it up front or do payments. And even at the time then, I was like, oh, that's really cool to make it possible for some people to be able to get it.
Well, and I think they got that business model from Sideshow Collectibles, because when the prices started going up on their figures, because I got the, like, all the Buffy figures were like $40 a piece when I got those. And then over the course of just a few years, by the time Sideshow started doing G.I. Joe, those 6-scale figures were up over $100. And I think it might have been with G.I. Joe where they started introducing the payment plans. And so Super 7 has, I don't know that they necessarily adopted that, but I do know that, like Sideshow, it was significant that they were offering that for their pricier products. And the other option you've got is you can order from a BigBadToyStore.com or an Entertainment Earth. With Big Bad, that's where I got my Snake Mountain, and I paid $4 shipping, because Big Bad does the $4 flat rate shipping on anything. So if you want time to save money rather than doing the payment plans, or you don't want to pay the $40 shipping, although I do think there's an upcharge on Big Bad, so you may be paying about the same.
With Big Bad, it all levels.
Yeah.
That cost is factored in there, because I think he was even saying in the video that, at Big Bad, it's $4.99.
Okay.
Instead of the $4.50 or whatever it is.
But if you prefer that, to take your time to save it up and then pay it, you can do that as well.
Not that I feel like the people that are going to buy this are the people that are going to buy this, but like with Big Bad, if anything happens between now and then, you can cancel. So I also look at your Entertainment Earths, your Big Bads, you're paying more to have that kind of insurance, to say, tag, I'm out.
To have more options. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's a gorgeous piece.
It is. It looks beautiful. That resin buildup that he has in the video. And again, for the listeners, you need to go watch that video, but it is huge. The paws going up to reveal the laser cannons, the functioning treads that are not going to be made out of rubber. They're going to be made out of a plastic so that they're durable and they're not disintegrating after a few years. All of those wheels in the treads, they all move. Everything moves, everything rolls. I'm excited. I don't know where I'm going to put it. No idea.
I just have this image in my head of the thunder tank with the sail barge on top, all with those resting on top of Snake Mountain. Because
yeah, I don't know. I've already got I got that crazy remote control Batmobile, the Justice League one that they did. My wife got me that for Christmas. Oh, dude, it's a 12th scale remote control Batmobile.
Holy cow!
From Justice League, and it's incredible. I'll send you a picture of it when we're done. But it's just it's on the floor on its stand because there's just no shelf big enough for it. But anyway, I think that about wraps up Super 7. I don't think we've got a whole heck of a lot more to talk about, but we will absolutely.
We will in time, though, because they've got a lot coming out.
Yeah, they've got a lot on the slate, and Toy Fair would have been right around the corner. I'm sure some of the announcements we've seen in the last few weeks are things that would have happened at Toy Fair, but I would imagine they've saved some stuff up. So over the coming months, everybody follow Needless Things on Instagram and Twitter. Join the Needless Things podcast Facebook group, and we'll keep you posted on all the relevant Super 7 news and all the other toy news out there.
Indeed.
Kristian, thanks for coming on, talking Super 7. Let us know where we can find you online.
You can find my toy photography on flickr.com and Instagram under the name Legion Cub.
An awesome, I love your composition and lighting on there. I will go on, because here's what it is. I don't know. You're really the only person I know who does what I think of as toy photography, because I just take pictures of toys, which is just, I put them in front of a background and take the picture. I don't really do anything. I don't build things or do lighting. And I don't know anybody that does. So your pictures will come up and I'll be like, oh, this is freaking awesome. Who's this? And I'm like, oh, it's Kristian. Awesome. It's like doubly impressive because I know you. So it's like, oh, that's a good one. You know what I mean?
It's growing up as a kid in the 70s with those little catalogs that used to come with the toys.
Right.
That was my original inspiration. And then,
And you hated
diorama building.
Well, and the commercials too, like in the 80s, all the G.I. Joe commercials and stuff where you're like, my yard doesn't look like that. Well, Kristian, thanks for coming on and talking Super 7. Yes. And we'll be talking again soon, probably about G.I. Joe on Audible Interlude, a G.I. Joe podcast. Later, man.
See ya.
I feel like we left stuff out, and I'm sure we did, because what I like to do is have conversations, and whatever comes up, comes up. Now, granted, I had notes. I had specific things that I knew we had to hit on and mention and discuss. But in general, I wanted it to be more our personal recollections and experiences with Super 7. But like I said, there were certain milestones and things that I wanted to make sure we addressed along the way. In the end, Super 7, NECA, and Mezco are very special companies with incredible visions and a dedication to their customers like no other toy company has. And, I buy lots of Hasbro stuff. I love lots of Hasbro stuff. Mattel makes a lot of cool stuff that I enjoy. But if I had to pick one toy company, it would be Super 7, Mezco, or NECA. And right now, Super 7 is ahead of the pack because toy is their operative word. As much as I think 112 Collective is the greatest action figure line of all time, as articulated as they are, as many accessories as they come with, as great as they are, they do tend to get played with for a little while and then put up on the shelf. Super 7 stuff is a whole other level. It's a combination of toy and collector item like has never been done before. And I just love them right now. I really do. So there you go. Share this podcast with your toy-loving fans. Tell them about the Needless Things YouTube channel. Join the Needless Things podcast Facebook group. And stay tuned. I love you guys.
You have been listening to a Needless Things podcast. You can follow Needless Things on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and at needlessthingspodcast.com. Love you. Mean it. Uh-huh.